My name is Sorrel Lewis, and I'm 28 years old. 3 weeks ago, my father sold my grandmother's antique piano and spent all $97,000 on a Mercedes for my sister. They thought Grandma Doreen was too sick in hospice to find out. They thought I was too weak to tell her. They were wrong. When I finally told her, she didn't cry. She simply reached for her phone, made one call, and set in motion events that would unravel everything my family had built on lies. But before I tell you what happened at my mother's 60th birthday party, let me take you back to where it started, the day Grandma was admitted to hospice. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. My last student, Emma, was struggling through Beethoven's Für Elise when my phone buzzed. Dad, he never called. Your grandmother had another heart attack. No greeting, no warmth. She's stable, but they're moving her to hospice. Family meeting at Pennsylvania Hospital in 1 hour. The line went dead. I apologized to Emma's mother, grabbed my keys, and drove through afternoon traffic with my stomach in knots. I arrived 40 minutes later, damp from the rain, to find my family already clustered in the waiting room. Dad stood checking his phone, still in his tailored suit. Mom perched on a chair, designer purse clutched like armor. My sister, Noelia, scrolled through her phone with the bored expression of someone waiting for a dentist appointment. Good, you're here. Dad didn't look up. We need to divide responsibilities. Not, how are you? Not, this must be hard. Just logistics. Someone needs to visit Mother daily. Diane and I have the business to run. We're closing the Harrison deal. And Noelia's relationship with Blake is at a critical stage. His family is very particular. Blake Harrison, son of Dad's most important business partner. Noelia had been dating him 8 months, and my parents treated it like a royal engagement. So, Sorrel, Dad's gaze settled on me. You'll handle the daily visits. Your schedule is flexible. The way he said flexible made teaching 37 kids a week sound like a hobby. Of course, I said quietly. I want to be with her anyway. Perfect. He was already turning away. Keep us updated if anything changes. I watched them head toward the elevator. As they rounded the corner, I heard Mom's voice, meant for Noelia, but perfectly audible. At least she'll be useful for something. I kept walking toward Grandma's room. I didn't turn around. I'd grown so used to this kind of pain that I'd stopped expecting anyone to acknowledge it. Grandma Doreen's hospice room smelled like lavender and old paper. She'd insisted on both. They try to make everything smell like antiseptic, she told the nurse. I refuse. If I'm going to die, I'll die surrounded by things I love. She was 76, sharp as cut glass, dying of congestive heart failure. The doctors gave her weeks, maybe 2 months. When I entered, she was watching the rain. Her face lit up when she saw me. There's my girl. You look troubled. What happened? I sank into the chair beside her bed. Nothing. Just logistics. I'll be visiting every day. And let me guess, your father made it sound like a chore. I smiled despite everything. You know him well. I raised him. I know exactly who he is. She reached for my hand, her grip weaker but deliberate. That's why we need to talk about the Steinway. My breath caught. The piano. The 1892 Steinway Grand where she'd taught me to play when I was 5, where I'd learned my first scales, where I'd cried at 13 after a disastrous recital. That piano is yours, Sorrel. I told your father and Maribel last month at Thanksgiving, in front of everyone. It belongs to you. I remembered, Dad's jaw tightening, Mom changing the subject, Noelia rolling her eyes, muttering about sentimental junk. Grandma, you don't have to. I want to. You're the only one who understands what it means. Promise me you'll take care of it. I promise. She smiled, but there was something else in her expression. Something I couldn't read. There are some things more valuable than money, child, she said softly, and some people who need to learn that lesson the hard way. 2 weeks passed. I visited every evening after my last lesson, bringing soup or butter cookies from the Polish bakery on Walnut Street. We talked about my students, about her performing days, about everything except that she was dying. On a rainy Thursday evening, she asked for a favor. I need you to bring me something from the house. The mahogany box on the piano, the one with my old performance photographs. I can go tomorrow. Tonight, if you can. I'd like to look at them while I remember. I still had the key she'd given me at 16. I'll be back in an hour. The drive to Chestnut Hill took 30 minutes through rain-slicked streets. Grandma's Victorian house sat dark on its tree-lined street. I let myself in, shook rain from my jacket, and walked toward the living room, where the piano had stood for 30 years. I stepped through the doorway and stopped breathing. The corner was empty. Not empty like furniture temporarily moved. Empty like something violently removed. A rectangular indent marked the carpet. A lighter patch showed on the wall where sunlight hadn't faded the paint for 3 decades. The Steinway was gone. My legs went weak. I grabbed the doorframe, staring at the absence. Pianos didn't just disappear. 9-foot concert grands didn't vanish. My hands shook as I called Mom. "Sorrel, I'm in the middle of—" "Where's Grandma's piano?" A pause. "Your father handled it. Adult business." "What does that mean? Where is it?" "Don't worry about it. We don't have time for your drama." "Mom, please." Click. She hung up. I tried Dad. Voicemail. I texted Noelia. "Do you know what happened to Grandma's piano?" 10 minutes later. "Not my problem." I drove to my parents' house on autopilot. The house, Grandma's house, I realized suddenly, where they'd lived since Grandpa died 12 years ago, was lit up, warm light spilling from every window. I rang the doorbell, pounded when no one answered fast enough. Dad opened the door, scotch in hand. "Sorrel, what?" "The piano. What did you do?" "Sold it. Got $97,000. Excellent price." The word hit like a physical blow. "You what?" "Mother's dying, Sorrel. She's confused. Besides, what would you do with it? You don't perform. You teach children." Behind him, keys jingled. Noelia appeared, grinning, dangling keys with a Mercedes emblem. "Check it out! Brand new C-Class. Blake's going to die when he sees it." The world tilted. "You bought her a car? With Grandma's piano money?" "It's an investment." Mom appeared with her own drink. "The Harrisons are particular about appearances. Blake's family needed to see that Noelia comes from quality." "That piano was supposed to be mine. And what would you do with it?" Mom's voice sharpened. "Cram it into your 1-bedroom in South Philly? Be realistic. You don't have the space. You don't have the career. Noelia needed this for her future." Noelia jingled the keys again. "Don't be jealous, Sorrel. Maybe if you'd chosen a better career, you could afford nice things too." I looked at them, at my father, my mother, my sister with her trophy keys, at the life they'd built where I was always the afterthought. "Does Grandma know?" The silence was immediate and heavy. "Does she know you sold her piano without asking?" Mom stepped closer, voice dropping to something cold. "Your grandmother is on morphine half the time. She doesn't need to know anything that might upset her. If you tell her and it causes stress, if she has another heart attack, that will be on you. Do you want to be responsible for killing your grandmother?" The accusation hung in the air like poison. This was where old Sorrel would have backed down, apologized, made herself smaller, but I kept hearing Grandma's voice. Some people need to learn that lesson the hard way. "Grandma has a right to know what happened to her property," I said quietly. "I won't lie to her." I turned and walked out before they could respond. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my second-hand couch, staring at a photograph. Grandma at her final concert 20 years ago, fingers poised above those keys, her face luminous. Mom's words circled. "If something happens, that will be on you." Was she right? Would telling Grandma be trading truth for her health, maybe her life? But then I remembered something Grandma told me at 12, when I didn't want to admit I'd failed a math test. Truth can wound, but lies always wound deeper. They just take longer. I thought about 28 years of staying quiet, of accepting less, of making myself invisible so my family could feel important. If I stayed silent now, I wasn't keeping peace. I was becoming complicit. At 3 a.m., I made my decision. Grandma deserved the truth. She deserved to know her son had stolen from her, lied to her, assumed she was too weak to matter. And maybe I deserved to stop apologizing for existing. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. I would tell her everything before my first lesson. Whatever happened next, at least I would have finally chosen truth over comfort. At least I would have finally chosen myself. What happens when Sorrel tells Grandma Doreen the truth? Will the shock be too much for her fragile heart? Or has the elderly woman been preparing for this betrayal all along? Grandma was awake when I arrived at 6:30 a.m., propped against her pillows, watching the sunrise paint the room gold. "You look like you haven't slept," she said softly. I pulled the chair close and took her hand. "I haven't. Grandma, I have to tell you something, and it's going to hurt." Her gray eyes studied my face. "Then tell me." So I did. The empty corner, the $97,000, the Mercedes gleaming in Noelia's driveway, Dad's casual dismissal, Mom's threat about causing another heart attack. I told her everything, bracing for tears, for shock, for devastation that might break her fragile heart. Instead, Grandma let out a long, slow breath, not a gasp, not a cry. A sigh, the sigh of someone who had seen this coming. "Grandma?" I whispered. She turned to look at me, and her expression wasn't grief-stricken. It was calm, almost resigned. "I knew this might happen, sweetheart." "You knew?" "I know my son. I've watched him become this person for 30 years. I hoped he'd change, but I also prepared for the possibility he wouldn't." My mind raced. Prepared how? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she reached for her phone on the bedside table. "Hand me that, would you?" I passed it to her, confused. She scrolled through her contacts with surprising steadiness, found a name, and pressed call. Put it on speaker. 3 rings. Then a man's voice, warm but professional. "Doreen, how are you feeling?" "I'm dying, Theodore, but I'm clear-headed. It's time." A pause. "I understand. When?" "Sunday. Maribel's 60th birthday party, at the house." "I'll prepare everything. Thank you, old friend." She ended the call and looked at me with a small, knowing smile. "Grandma." I stared at her. "Who is Theodore?" "Theodore Whitmore. He was your grandfather's closest friend. He's been helping me with certain matters for the past 5 years." 5 years. She'd been planning something for 5 years. "What matters?" "Protecting you, sweetheart. The way I should have all along." She closed her eyes, suddenly looking exhausted. "I just need you to do one thing for me. Anything. Come to the party Sunday, dress nicely, and bring your patience, the kind I taught you when you were learning Chopin and wanted to throw the sheet music across the room." Despite everything, I almost laughed. "That bad?" "Necessary." Her expression softened. "Your father and mother need to learn that actions have consequences, and I've spent 5 years making sure that when the lesson came, it would be unforgettable." Theodore Whitmore's office was in a narrow brownstone near Rittenhouse Square. I went after my last lesson Friday, still processing everything. He was in his early 60s with silver hair and kind eyes that had clearly seen everything. His office smelled of old leather and coffee. "Sorrel Lewis." He shook my hand warmly. "Your grandmother speaks of you constantly. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." "Mr. Whitmore." "Theodore, please." He gestured to a chair. "Your grandmother asked me to explain a few things before Sunday." I sat, hands trembling slightly. "Your grandmother is remarkable," he began. "She's also far more astute than her children give her credit for. 5 years ago, she asked me to investigate certain concerns she had about Callan." "What kind of concerns?" "Money, primarily. She noticed patterns, loans that weren't repaid, increasing demands from Maribel, Noelia's growing sense of entitlement. She hoped she was wrong, but she wanted documentation, just in case." He pulled a folder from his desk. "I'm a private investigator and a state consultant. I document things, and what I documented over 5 years was troubling." "Like what?" "Like the fact that your father has been representing your grandmother's house as his own in business dealings, using it to establish credibility with partners like James Harrison. Your mother has hosted charity events there, accepting praise for their beautiful home. They've made renovations without permission. They've lived there for 12 years as if they own it." But they do own it, don't they? Grandma gave it to them when Grandpa died. Theodore's expression didn't change. Is that what they told you? That's what everyone says. Everyone's wrong. He slid a document across the desk. This is the property deed. See the name? I looked down. Clear as day. Doreen Catherine Lewis. Your grandmother allowed Callan and Maribel to live there rent-free, but she never transferred ownership. Not legally. Not ever. I stared at the document, my brain struggling to process. They've been living in her house for 12 years thinking it's theirs? Precisely. And under Pennsylvania law, they're technically tenants at will, which means the property owner can terminate that arrangement with proper notice. But why would Grandma let them believe? Because she was watching, Theodore said gently. Watching to see if her son would prove her fears wrong. Unfortunately, he did exactly what she expected. He pulled out another folder. Property tax receipts, all paid from your grandmother's accounts. Utility bills, same. Maintenance, insurance, everything. Over 12 years, she's covered approximately $340,000 in expenses. My head was spinning. So, when they sold the piano, they sold property from a house they don't own without the owner's permission. In legal terms, that's conversion of property, both a civil and criminal matter. I spent Saturday in a daze teaching lessons on autopilot. That night, Grandma called. Her voice was weaker than before, each word costing her effort, but her mind was sharp. Sorrel, are you ready for tomorrow? I think so. Grandma, are you sure about this? It's Mom's birthday, in front of all those people. That's precisely why it needs to be tomorrow. Your father sold my piano like it was his decision to make. He announced it at that family dinner last month like I was already dead. He assumed I was too weak and you were too quiet to matter. I remember. Then you understand why the lesson needs witnesses. Her voice softened. I'm not doing this for revenge. Revenge is empty. I'm doing it because it's right. Because you deserve to be protected, especially after I'm gone. Tears burned behind my eyes. Grandma, I should have acted sooner. I watched how they treated you for years, and I kept hoping Callan would change. That was my mistake. A pause. I don't have much time left, sweetheart. The doctors say weeks, but I think it's less. So I need to know, do you trust me? Always. Then come tomorrow. Wear something that makes you feel strong. And remember, you're not the villain in this story. You never were. Sunday arrived with pale winter sunlight. I chose a navy dress and the pearl earrings Grandma gave me for my 21st birthday. Armor for a battle I didn't fully understand. The house, Grandma's house, looked almost festive. Someone had hung a Happy 60th Birthday banner across the porch. Cars lined the driveway, spilling onto the street. I parked at the far end and sat for a moment, gathering myself. Inside, the house buzzed with 35 guests. Extended family I saw only at holidays. Neighbors from the old days, Dad's business associates. I spotted James Harrison near the fireplace, his son Blake beside him with Noelia on his arm. The living room drew my eye immediately. A large potted plant sat where the Steinway had stood for 30 years. It looked ridiculous, a leafy apology for something that couldn't be apologized away. Mom held court near the dining table in a red designer dress, accepting compliments like tribute. Dad worked the room with practiced charm, and in the far corner, almost invisible among the crowd, sat a silver-haired man with a leather briefcase. Theodore Whitmore caught my eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Aunt Vivian, Grandma's younger sister, appeared beside me. Anna, sweetheart, how is Eleanor really? Tired, but still sharp. She always was the smart one. Her eyes drifted to the empty corner. I noticed the piano's gone. Callan said Eleanor wanted to sell it. Before I could respond, Dad's voice cut through the crowd. Everyone, if I could have your attention, please. He stood in the center of the living room, crystal glass raised, commanding the space like he owned it, which, I now knew, he didn't. Today we celebrate 60 wonderful years of Maribel Thompson. Applause. Mom beamed. But I also want to share some exciting family news. My stomach dropped. As many of you know, our daughter Noelia has been seeing Blake Harrison, son of my dear friend and partner James. He gestured toward Blake, who smiled politely. "And to celebrate her bright future, we have a special surprise." He led everyone outside, where a silver Mercedes sat in the driveway, red bow on the hood. "A gift," Dad announced proudly, "made possible by my mother's generosity. She sold her antique piano to invest in her granddaughter's future." Noelia squealed, threw her arms around Dad, posed for photos beside the car. I stood frozen on the porch. He was doing it again, rewriting the story, making himself the hero. A woman I didn't recognize leaned toward her husband. "Wasn't that piano supposed to go to the other granddaughter, the music teacher?" "Guess plans changed." Aunt Vivian appeared beside me, her face pale. "Anna, did Eleanor really agree to this?" Before I could answer, Noelia spotted me and called out, voice dripping with false sweetness. "Sarl, come take a picture. Don't be jealous. I'm sure Grandma will leave you something too. Maybe her old sheet music." Scattered laughter from the crowd. My hands shook, my vision blurred, and then behind me, I heard the click of a briefcase opening. Everyone filed back inside, but Aunt Vivian blocked Dad's path. "Callan, nee." Her voice was steady. "I need to ask you something." Dad's smile didn't waver. "Can it wait? We're celebrating." "Did you ask Eleanor before you sold that piano?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Nearby, conversations stopped. "Mother is in hospice," Dad said smoothly. "She's not in condition to make these decisions. We did what was best for her." "I spoke with her this morning." Vivian's voice grew stronger. "She's completely lucid, and she told me you never asked her permission. You never even told her." More people were listening now. I saw James Harrison frown, saw Blake shift uncomfortably. Mom pushed forward, face flushed. "Vivian, this is my birthday. Let's not make a scene." "A scene?" Vivian laughed without humor. "Maribel, your husband sold Eleanor's most precious possession without her knowledge and used the money for a car. If anyone's making a scene, it's not me." The room went quiet. 35 pairs of eyes ping-ponged between Vivian and my parents. Dad's composure cracked slightly. "This is a family matter. It doesn't need to be discussed in public." "Actually," a new voice said from behind us, "I think public is exactly where it needs to be discussed." I turned. Theodore Whitmore stood with his briefcase open, a folder of documents in hand. He walked toward the center of the room with calm authority. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Theodore Whitmore. I'm Doreen Lewis's estate consultant and private investigator." He positioned himself near the empty corner where the piano used to stand. "I apologize for interrupting the celebration, but Mrs. Lewis has asked me to address some urgent matters regarding her estate." Dad's face went white. "My mother has an estate consultant? Since when?" "Since 5 years ago, Mr. Lewis. I also worked with your father before his passing. You would know this if you'd ever asked." Muffled gasps rippled through the room. Theodore held up a document. "There seems to be confusion about property ownership, so let me clarify. This is the deed to the house we're currently standing in." He paused, letting the moment build. "Notice the name on the deed. Doreen Catherine Lewis. Not Callan Lewis. Not Maribel Lewis." He looked directly at my father. "This house has never been transferred. It was never gifted. You've been living here rent-free for 12 years at Mrs. Lewis's generosity. Nothing more." The room erupted in whispers. Dad grabbed the edge of a chair. "This is impossible. Mother said the house was ours. She promised." "She promised you could live here," Theodore said calmly. "There's a significant legal difference. Legally, you're tenants at will, and the property owner has the right to terminate that arrangement with proper notice." Mom's voice was shrill. "We've lived here for 12 years. We've invested in this house." "Without authorization," Theodore replied. "Any improvements made without written consent belong to the property owner." He pulled out more documents, property tax receipts, all paid from Mrs. Lewis's accounts. Utility bills, same. Over 12 years, approximately $340,000 in expenses. James Harrison took a deliberate step away from my father. "I should also mention," Theodore continued, that Pennsylvania law takes property fraud quite seriously. Representing someone else's property as your own, particularly in business contexts, can have significant legal consequences. Harrison's expression shifted from confusion to cold calculation. He was already pulling out his phone. Theodore held up another document. Now, regarding the 1892 Steinway grand piano, this instrument was sold 3 weeks ago to Klein's Antique Instruments for $97,000, without the owner's knowledge or consent. He looked at Dad. In Pennsylvania, that's conversion of property, both civil and criminal. What does that mean? Noelia's voice was small. It means the $97,000 must be returned to Mrs. Lewis within 60 days. Failure to comply will result in legal action for misappropriation of property. Dad laughed, a hollow, desperate sound. We don't have that kind of money. It went to the car. Theodore glanced at the Mercedes outside. Then I suggest you liquidate that asset. The dealer might accept a return, though you'll take a loss. Noelia burst into tears. You're taking my car? I'm not taking anything, Miss Lewis. I'm explaining the legal consequences of your family's choices. The room was suffocating in its silence. Dad turned slowly to me, his face twisted with rage. You did this! You poisoned her against us! I stood, my voice steadier than I expected. No, Dad. Grandma made these arrangements 5 years ago. I found out last week. Liar! Mom's voice shook. You've always been jealous of Noelia. Something cold and hard crystallized inside me. I didn't sell Grandma's piano without permission. I didn't spend the money on myself. I didn't lie to everyone about what happened. I stepped forward. I'm not the one who said at least she's useful for something when I agreed to visit Grandma every day. Gasps throughout the room. Aunt Vivian's hand found mine. I spent 28 years being invisible in this family. I accepted it because I thought that's what love required. I looked at each of them, but Grandma taught me that loving yourself means standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. I took a breath. So, I'm done apologizing. I'm done staying silent. And I'm done pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Absolute stillness. Then Theodore spoke again, his voice cutting through the tension. There's one more thing you should know. He pulled out a final document. 5 years ago, Mrs. Lewis established a trust independent of her previous will. This trust was created specifically to protect her most valuable assets in the event of financial misconduct by family members. He looked up, and his gaze settled directly on me. The sole beneficiary of this trust is Sorrel Rose Lewis. The world stopped. The first week after the party was chaos. Dad's business partners became unavailable. Old friends stopped calling. James Harrison withdrew from their joint venture with a cold email. I can't do business with someone I can't trust, Callan. The deal worth over $200,000, gone. Noelia returned the Mercedes for $80,000, $17,000 less than they'd paid. Blake broke up with her via text 3 days later. My family thinks it's best we take some time apart. The golden child suddenly ordinary. No car, no wealthy boyfriend, no special status. I didn't gloat. I just visited Grandma every evening, held her hand while she slept more and more. 3 weeks after the party, Hospice called at 5:47 a.m. You should come now. I drove through empty Philadelphia streets, heart in my throat. Grandma smiled when I entered. My brave girl. I climbed into bed beside her. I'm scared, Grandma, of losing you, of never having a family again. You already know how to carry it. I taught you with music. Her hand weakly squeezed mine. Playing piano, it's about holding tension, the dissonance before resolution. I nodded, tears falling. Life is the same. You hold the tension. Eventually, resolution comes. Play something for me. In your mind. I closed my eyes, imagined Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. I can hear it, she whispered. So beautiful. Her grip loosened. Nurse Beverly checked her pulse, shook her head gently. I held her for 20 minutes after, humming the Nocturne. Beverly handed me an envelope. She asked me to give you this. Inside, Grandma's handwriting. Dearest Sorrel, the house, the money, they're tools. Use them to build the life you deserve. But here's what I really want you to know. I forgave your father years ago. I hope someday you can too. Not for him. For you. Carrying anger is like carrying stones. Eventually, you have to put them down to play piano. I love you. Always. I sobbed into the letter. Even after everything, Grandma wanted peace for me, not revenge. The funeral was simple. I played Chopin's Nocturne on the church's modest upright. Aunt Vivian sat in front with tissues. Grandma's old friends filled several pews. My parents sat in the back. They didn't approach me. Mom wore dark sunglasses. Dad stared straight ahead. Noelia wasn't there. Too emotionally fragile, Mom explained. I delivered the eulogy about Grandma's music, her wisdom, her strength. I didn't mention the drama. After the service, Dad started toward me, then stopped when Mom pulled him away. Maybe he wanted to apologize. Maybe not. I'll never know. 6 months later, movers positioned a beautiful Yamaha C3X grand piano in the exact spot where the Steinway had stood. Not a Steinway. I couldn't afford that. But this piano was mine. Earned. Chosen. Callan and Maribel had moved out 4 months after the funeral to a small apartment in Northeast Philly. Dad's business downsized. Mom joined a different social club. We didn't speak. Not from anger, just distance. I used part of the inheritance to start a scholarship program, free piano lessons for underprivileged kids. 10 students, meeting every Saturday. My first private student was Emma, who'd finally mastered Fur-Elise. Finding purpose in passing on what Grandma gave me felt right. One Saturday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hey, it's me, Noelia. I'm in therapy now, she said. Group sessions for codependency and self-worth issues. I listened. My therapist says I used you as a mirror to avoid looking at myself. Her voice cracked. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be different. I looked at Grandma's photo on the piano. Carrying anger is like carrying stones. That's good, Noelia. I'm glad. Can we, maybe, coffee sometime in a few months? Every part of me wanted to say no, to keep the door closed, but Grandma's letter echoed. I forgave your father years ago. Maybe. Text me when you're ready. 1 month later, we met at a cafe in Center City. She looked different. No makeup, simple ponytail, regular jeans. Thanks for coming, she said nervously. I almost didn't. I was cruel to you our entire lives. I mocked your career, your choices. At that party, I enjoyed showing off that car while you were hurting. She closed her eyes. What kind of person does that? Someone who was taught that's what love looks like, I said quietly. She looked up, surprised. Mom and Dad loved you by giving you things. They loved me by not seeing me at all. We both got damaged, just differently. I don't know if I can fix us. Maybe you can't. Maybe us doesn't exist anymore. I paused. But maybe something new could. Eventually. If we're both willing. Are you willing? I thought about it. Really thought. I'm willing to try. But it'll be slow. With boundaries. I understand. We talked for an hour. About therapy. About my scholarship program. About our absent parents. It wasn't comfortable, but it was honest. When we left, she hugged me, quick and awkward. Thank you. I just nodded. Some bridges take years to rebuild, but we'd laid the first plank. That evening, I hosted dinner with Aunt Vivian and her family. We ate at Grandma's table, laughing over stories. Vivian leaned over. Eleanor would be so proud. You set boundaries with love, not anger. I realized she was right. The real inheritance wasn't the house or money. It was permission to value myself. After everyone left, I sat at the piano as the sun set. I played the Nocturne. My phone buzzed. Dad, your mother's birthday is next month. Sunday brunch at Antonio's. You're welcome to join. No pressure. A year ago, I would have agonized. Now I typed, I'll let you know. Thank you for the invitation. Maybe I'd go. Maybe not. But the choice was mine. I opened my journal and wrote, 6 months since Grandma died. I don't have the family I wanted. Maybe I never will. Noelia and I are taking tiny steps. Mom and Dad are distant, but I'm okay with that. I'm building a life here, teaching music, learning that I can be alone without being lonely. The piano isn't the Steinway. The family isn't what I imagined. But I have something better. Myself. Boundaries. A life built on truth instead of silence. Grandma gave me the greatest gift, permission to be enough, exactly as I am. I closed the journal and returned to the piano, playing not for approval, just for joy. Outside, the stars emerged. Inside, music filled the house. I was free. 3 years later, the Sorrel Lewis Music Scholarship Program had grown to 30 students. The living room filled with children every Saturday, their laughter echoing through the house. Emma was in high school now, composing her own pieces. Sophie was preparing for her first recital. I'd published a small book of teaching methods, nothing fancy, but it helped other teachers. Noelia came to Sunday dinners once a month. We weren't close like sisters in movies, but we were honest. She'd gotten engaged to Aaron, a social worker she met in therapy. Mom and Dad had dinner with me twice a year. Stiff, polite conversations about weather and current events. They'd never apologized. I'd stopped waiting. Aunt Vivian told me once, "Some people can't say sorry because it would require admitting who they've been. That's their burden, not yours." She was right. On the 3rd anniversary of Grandma's death, I sat at the piano at sunset and played the nocturne. "I did it, Grandma," I whispered. "I'm okay. More than okay." Evening light caught her photograph, Grandma at 60, radiant, fingers above those Steinway keys. I didn't have that piano anymore, but I had her legacy. Courage to exist without apologizing. Strength to love without shrinking. Wisdom to put down stones so my hands were free to play. Outside, children's voices drifted from the garden. Inside, music filled the spaces grief had left behind. I was alone in the house, but I had never been less lonely. This was the inheritance Grandma really left me. Not property or money, but permission to finally, beautifully, completely be myself. And that was worth more than any piano in the world.